Hey there, welcome to the channel. If you're looking for the perfect way to unwind and drift off to sleep, you're in the right place. Tonight, we've got a whole hour of some of the most interesting and emotional Reddit stories from crazy family. Dramas to heartwarming moments to help you relax and escape the day. So get comfortable, let go of your worries, and let these stories carry you into a peaceful sleep. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoy this, and make sure to subscribe for more stories to relax to in the future. Now let's get started and dive into tonight's tales. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let's fall asleep together. Enjoy. I, 27F, recently got married to the love of my life, Daniel, 30 me, after 5 years together. The wedding was everything we'd hoped for, an intimate beach ceremony with close friends and family, followed by a sunset dinner reception under twinkling lights and soft music. It wasn't overly fancy, but we put a lot of thought and effort into making it special and meaningful. Except, it was almost completely derailed by my older brother's wife, Rachel, 35F. Let me rewind a little to explain how we got here. My brother Andrew, 34M, and I used to be close. We were the only kids in our family and spent a lot of time together. Growing up, he was the protective big brother, and I was the little sister tagging along. That dynamic started to shift when he met Rachel about 6 years ago. Rachel is intense. She has a very dominant personality, always needs to be the center of attention, and seems to view life as a competition, especially when it comes to family events. At first, I chalked it up to nerves or insecurity. I tried to be understanding, to get along with her even though she made it difficult. There were red flags early on. At my college graduation, she complained that the event was boring and left halfway through. At my parents' 30th anniversary party, she wore a white cocktail dress and made a speech about how they inspired her and Andrew's love, completely uninvited. At our engagement dinner, she rolled her eyes at every compliment I got and kept bringing up how she and Andrew almost eloped in Greece. I tried to ignore it. I really did. But things escalated once we started planning the wedding. From the moment we announced our engagement, Rachel made it clear she thought our wedding was basic. When I mentioned doing a beach ceremony, she scoffed and said, "That's so Instagram cliché." When I said we wanted a small guest list, she replied, "Well, I guess if you can't afford a real wedding." She even told my mom she hoped we'd at least do something elegant, so she didn't feel embarrassed attending. I didn't confront her about any of this. I just started distancing myself. I told Andrew that I wanted him there as my brother, but I wasn't sure I wanted Rachel in the bridal party or involved in planning. He got defensive and said I was excluding his wife for no reason. So I relented a little and included them both in the invitations, gave Rachel a +1 and even made sure she had a front row seat. Then came the wedding weekend. Everything was running smoothly until the morning of the wedding. One of my bridesmaids, Lexi, came rushing into the bridal suite looking flustered and said, Rachel just arrived, in a white dress, like full-length, beaded bridal white. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. Rachel showed up in a floor-length, sparkly white gown with a low back and a freaking train. At my wedding. My heart sank when I saw her. Every guest turned to look at her like she was the bride. People were whispering. My mom looked mortified. I calmly pulled her aside and said, "Rachel, you can't wear white. You know that's inappropriate, right?" She smirked and said, "It's not white, it's champagne, and I look good in it. I thought you wouldn't mind since your dress is lace and short. Besides, if you're confident in yourself, why should it matter?" I nearly lost it. But I took a deep breath and said, "Either you change or you leave." She rolled her eyes and said, "Wow, insecure much?" I didn't have time to argue, so I sent one of the venue staff to bring her a shawl and asked her to sit in the back, instead of the front. She sulked, but she did it. I thought that would be the end of it. Nope. During the reception, she got drunk, like slurring her words, drunk. She interrupted our first dance by walking between us to grab her clutch from a nearby table. She made a toast without being asked, during which she said, "I always thought I'd be the next bride in the family, but I guess surprises happen." Then she winked at Andrew, who looked like he wanted to disappear. Finally, the last straw came during the cake cutting. Right after we sliced the first piece, Rachel walked up, took a piece off the platter and smashed it into Andrew's face, screaming, "Let's have fun too, babe." Everyone turned. People gasped. It was like she was trying to stage a second cake-cutting moment for herself. That was it. I walked over, pulled her aside again, and told her firmly but not yelling that her behavior had crossed every line. That she'd made the entire day about herself. That she needed to leave. Rachel, of course, burst into tears and said I was humiliating her, that I was bitter and controlling and jealous of her confidence. Andrew tried to calm her down, but she screamed that if I kicked her out, she'd never forgive this betrayal. I said, "That's your choice." And I had security escort her out. Andrew stayed. He looked torn, but he said, "I don't agree with how she acted. I'm sorry. I'll talk to her." After the wedding, Rachel blocked me on everything. Andrew didn't return my texts for a week. Eventually he called and said he was disappointed that I hadn't tried harder to get along with Rachel, that she felt attacked and excluded, and I ruined her image in front of the whole family. I asked him if he thought any of what she did was appropriate. He didn't really answer. Our parents are trying to stay neutral, but my mom did. Say she thought Rachel's behavior was in poor taste. Still, a few relatives have said I overreacted by kicking her out and should have just ignored it to keep the peace. One cousin even said, "You know how Rachel is. She's extra. Why let her win by reacting?" But I don't see it that way. This was my wedding, the one day I get to be celebrated without drama. And she deliberately tried to upstage me, insult me, and hijack the spotlight multiple times. If I'd stayed quiet, I'd be telling her that's okay, that she can bulldoze boundaries as long as she cries afterward. Still, part of me wonders, if I made the situation worse by confronting her, if I could have handled it differently, if I've now permanently damaged my relationship with my brother, am I the a-hole for kicking my sister-in-law out of my wedding? Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my sister see my daughter after what she did at my baby shower? I, 32F, have one sibling, my older sister Kate, 35F. Growing up, we were close in that complicated sisterly way. We'd fight constantly, but also defend each other to the death if someone else tried to mess with us. Kate was always more outgoing than me, more popular, more confident, and in many ways more reckless. She was the kind of person who'd charm her way out of a speeding ticket, while I'd be sitting in the passenger seat, praying we wouldn't get arrested. When we were in our 20s, our paths started to diverge. I got a steady job in healthcare, administration, met my now husband Mark, 34M, and started living a pretty structured, calm life. Kate, on the other hand, bounced between different jobs, had a string of intense but short-lived relationships, and leaned into what she called her free spirit era. She loved to travel, partied a lot, and never really settled down. That's fine. It's her life. But over time, I noticed that she had a hard time being happy for me when things were going well. When I got promoted, she made jokes about me becoming a corporate drone. When I got engaged, she asked if I was sure I wasn't just bored and settling. When I announced my pregnancy, she gave me a tight smile and said, "Wow, guess you're really doing the whole suburban mom thing now, huh?" That last comment stung more than I let on. I chalked it up to her own issues. Kate had always had a complicated relationship with motherhood. Our mom was emotionally distant, and Kate's experiences with dating had left her jaded about relationships and parenthood in general. She once told me she never wanted kids because she didn't want to screw them up the way we got screwed up. Fair enough. Anyway, when I hit my 3rd trimester, Mark and I threw a baby shower. It wasn't extravagant, just a backyard BBQ at our place with some decorations, a cake, and about 25 close friends and family. Kate was invited, of course, and I was hoping maybe this would be a chance for her to show a little support, or at least dial back the sarcasm. Instead, she showed up drunk. I'm not talking had a few mimosas drunk. I mean visibly, embarrassingly, slurring her words drunk. She came in with a bottle of tequila as her gift and announced loudly, "For when you're done being a human incubator." People laughed nervously. I tried to smile through it, but I was already mortified. Throughout the afternoon, she made a series of uncomfortable jokes about stretch marks, about how my boobs would never look the same, about Mark being brave for sticking around through pregnancy hormones. She told one of my co-workers that mom life is just unpaid labor with a side of postpartum depression, and made a toast saying, "Here's to the last time you'll feel like a person for the next 18 years. At one point, she grabbed the, "Psych, yes, we had a tiny PA for announcements and games," and said, "You know, when we were kids, OP used to make all her dolls line up in birth order and rank them by grades. Now she gets to do it with real humans. Congratulations, Mama Tyrant." I was stunned. My mother-in-law looked horrified. My friends gave me sympathetic glances. I pulled Kate aside and whispered, "You need to stop. Now." She rolled her eyes. Anne said, "Jesus, relax, it's a party, you're being so uptight." I asked her to leave. She didn't argue, just smirked and said, "Guess some people can't handle the truth," and walked out. That night, I cried. Not because she embarrassed me, but because it confirmed something I'd been trying to deny for a long time. Kate didn't respect me. She didn't support me. And worst of all, she seemed to resent me for being happy. After my daughter Ava was born, Kate texted a casual, "Congrats. She's cute." That was it. No flowers, no visit, no call, not even a card. 2 months later, she reached out and asked if she could come meet the baby. I said no. She seemed shocked. She said, "Are you seriously keeping me from my niece?" I replied, "You embarrassed me, insulted me, and made my pregnancy feel like a joke. You haven't once apologized. You don't get to show up now and pretend none of that happened." She fired back, "I was trying to lighten the mood. Sorry, I'm not some Pinterest perfect robot like you. But fine, be a control freak, don't let me see her, you'll regret it. It's been a year, Ava just turned 1, Kate has not met her. She hasn't tried again, hasn't apologized, and instead has told several mutual friends that I'm punishing her for being different and gatekeeping motherhood like a smug Stepford wife. Some of those friends think I'm being harsh, that it was just a bad day and that Kate has her own struggles, that I should be the bigger person and let her back in. Even Mark has gently asked, "Do you think maybe she's just jealous and acting out?" Maybe, but I'm tired of excusing her behavior. I don't want someone in my daughter's life who can't show basic respect. I don't want her growing up watching her mum get mocked and belittled by her aunt. I don't want to normalize toxic family dynamics just because she's blood. But still, sometimes I wonder if I'm overreacting, if I should give her one more chance, if Ava will grow up resenting me for not trying harder to bridge the gap. Am I the a-hole for keeping my sister out of my daughter's life? Am I the a-hole for exposing my best friend's affair at her wedding and ruining everything? I, 29F, had been best friends with Alyssa, 30F, since college. We met in a creative writing class and bonded instantly over our mutual love for horror, novels and trashy reality TV. For almost a decade, we'd been inseparable, through breakups, moves, job losses, you name it. I considered her my ride or die, my chosen sister. So when she got engaged to Jason, 33M, I was genuinely happy for her. They'd been dating for 3 years. Jason was nice enough, polite, a bit reserved, and not super talkative. He wasn't the type I expected Alyssa to end up with. She'd usually gone for loud, artsy types, but she swore he made her feel safe, and that mattered more than Sam Hashan. She gushed about how grounded he was, how steady. I supported it, even if I didn't see the sparks between them. She asked me to be her maid of honor, and I agreed without hesitation. We planned everything together. The bachelorette, weekend, dress fittings, even helped her write her vows. She cried reading them to me for the first time. I cried too. I thought it was real. I thought they were solid. Then, 2 weeks before the wedding, I found out everything was a lie. I was out with some mutual acquaintances from college, drinks, catching up, and someone, let's call her Nina, pulled me aside and said, "Hey, is Alyssa still seeing that guy from the yoga studio?" I blinked. "What guy?" Nina hesitated. "The one with the sleeve tattoos? She used to bring him around last year." I froze. I remembered him. His name was Damien. She'd introduced him as a friend once, a bodywork specialist she met during a retreat. She never mentioned him again. So I asked Nina, "Wait, you think she's still seeing him?" Nina gave me this look. I know she is. My sister works at that studio. She's seen them sneaking around. They've been hooking up recently. I laughed at first. I said, no way. She's getting married in 2 weeks. Nina just sipped her drink and said, maybe you should ask her. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I confronted Alyssa. Not angrily, just confused, like I needed clarification. I told her what I'd heard and asked her directly, are you cheating on Jason? She went quiet. Then she laughed and said, oh my God, people gossip so much. No, Damien and I are just friends. I did hook up with him a couple of times before Jason and I got serious, but that was forever ago. She looked me dead in the eye and said, I would never do that to Jason. I wanted to believe her. She was my best friend. But something felt off, like her reaction was too rehearsed, so I did something I'm not proud of. I started digging. I reached out to Nina's sister, the one who worked at the yoga studio. I didn't ask her to gossip. I just told her I was worried about Alyssa and needed the truth. She hesitated, but eventually said, they're together all the time. They leave together. She brings him coffee. I thought they were dating. Then I looked through Alyssa's Instagram. She had a close friends story, one I wasn't in, apparently, and I made a fake account to follow it. Sure enough, it was full of inside jokes, videos of her and Damien drinking wine, even a boomerang of their hands on top of each other's. My stomach dropped. It wasn't even old. It was from 4 days ago. I screenshotted everything. Every post, every video, every damning message. Then I sat with it. For days. I didn't know what to do. Should I tell Jason? Should I confront her again? Should I just pretend I didn't know and let the wedding happen? Everyone around her loved her. She was charismatic, radiant, the life of the party. And Jason adored her. He was planning to surprise her at the wedding with a private honeymoon trip to Italy. He told me about it over coffee one day, smiling like a puppy. It made me sick. I decided to give Alyssa one last chance to come clean. I met her for brunch 3 days before the wedding. I said, I need you to be honest with me. You're still sleeping with Damien, aren't you? She paused, took a long sip of her mimosa and said, okay, yes, but it's not what you think. I stared at her. She continued, Damien is, I don't know, he's a part of me. But he's not reliable. Jason is. Jason is marriage material. Damien isn't. I need stability. That doesn't mean I have to cut off every connection I've ever had. You don't understand what love is. I was stunned. She went on. Look, don't tell Jason. Please. This isn't your business. And I swear, once we're married, I'm going to stop seeing Damien. I just needed to say goodbye on my own terms. She smiled like we'd just shared a secret. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, so I said nothing until the wedding. The venue was beautiful, rustic barn, fairy lights, all of it out of a Pinterest board. I stood beside her in my bridesmaid dress, holding her bouquet while she said her vows. She looked stunning. Jason looked like the happiest man on earth. Then the officiant said, if anyone has reason, these two should not be joined. My heart pounded. I didn't plan to say anything, I swear. But Jason looked at her like she was everything, and I just snapped. I raised my hand. Everyone gasped. Alyssa went pale. I said, I'm sorry, but I can't let this happen. Jason, you deserve to know the truth. Silence. I walked over and pulled out my phone. I handed it to Jason. On it were the screenshots. The videos. Everything. He looked through them in complete silence. Then he turned to Alyssa and said, is this true? She burst into tears and screamed at me, why would you do this? The ceremony ended right there. His family stormed out. Her mom screamed at me. The guests were in chaos. I left. I didn't even go to the reception, if there even was one. It's been 2 months. Alyssa blocked me on everything. Most of our mutual friends have ghosted me. A few said I should have kept my mouth shut. That affairs aren't black and white. That a wedding isn't the time or place. Jason reached out once. He thanked me. He said he was blindsided and humiliated, but glad he didn't marry a liar. Still, I feel hollow. I lost my best friend. I lost my community. I wake up some nights wondering if I overstepped. Am I the a-hole for doing what I did? Am I the a-hole for getting my co-worker fired? after she tried to sabotage me, and now everyone at work is calling me heartless. I, 34F, work in the corporate communications department at a large tech company. It's a well-paying job, competitive environment, and I've been there for almost 6 years. I worked my way up from being a junior writer to now leading several internal campaigns and handling sensitive PR crises. I take my job seriously, and I'm good at it. Last year, our team hired a new communications associate, Emily, 28F, who transferred in from another department. She was friendly, charismatic, very social, and for the first couple of months we got along really well. She was always complimenting my writing, asking me questions about the team dynamic and volunteering to help with my projects. I took her under my wing a bit and even gave her some tips that helped her land a small spotlight article in the company newsletter. At first, I thought I had a great teammate, but over time, things started to feel off, like she was too eager to be liked and too polished in how she presented herself to upper management. I'd noticed that she would copy language from my emails or presentation slides. Then she'd use them in meetings as if they were her own. She'd also jump in to answer questions I was asked and subtly shift the credit to herself. It bugged me, but I didn't say anything at first. I figured maybe she was just trying to find her footing. Then things escalated. We were working on a major project, a rebranding effort for the internal communication platform. It was a big deal, a 6-month initiative involving multiple departments. I was leading the project, and Emily was assigned to help. We had weekly meetings with VPs, strict deadlines, and a lot of visibility. About 2 months in, I started noticing weird delays. Tasks Emily claimed she'd completed were missing. Files she said were uploaded were nowhere to be found. She started blaming tech glitches, or claiming she thought someone else was handling them. She even said I gave her conflicting directions, something I knew wasn't true, since I document all project details in our shared planner. I kept having to clean up her messes last minute to keep things on track. I had several one-on-one conversations with her, trying to clarify expectations. She always acted surprised, then apologetic, promised to be better. Then came the moment that blew everything wide open. We had a presentation scheduled with the executive leadership team. I spent an entire weekend finalizing the slide deck, editing down our talking points, and ensuring every detail was perfect. Emily was supposed to prepare a short summary for the last section. The night before the meeting, I emailed her to confirm everything was set. She responded that she was reviewing it now and would have it ready by morning. The next day we're presenting. I kick things off, everything's going smoothly until we get to the final section. I hand it over to Emily, expecting her to deliver the summary. She opens her mouth and starts presenting a completely different proposal, not a summary. A whole new direction, different metrics, new branding ideas, and a totally contradictory narrative to the one we'd spent 6 months building. The VPs were visibly confused. One of them asked, "Is this a new proposal?" And Emily replied, "Yes, I thought we could pivot to a bolder approach based on recent trends." She did it with such confidence that for a moment even I was thrown off. I quickly stepped in and said, "To clarify, this wasn't part of our planned presentation. What you're seeing now isn't what was approved for today's agenda." After the meeting, my manager pulled me aside and asked what the hell happened. I explained everything. How Emily had gone off script, hadn't told me about any changes, and completely derailed our work. He told me he'd look into it. That night I received a Teams message from Emily. "Sorry if I caught you off guard. Today, I just thought it would be good to show initiative. Don't be mad." I was livid. I didn't respond. Over the next few days, I tried to patch things up with leadership. I rescheduled a follow-up meeting, sent them the correct deck, and reassured them the project was still on track. Then, an anonymous complaint was submitted to HR. Someone had reported me for creating a hostile work environment, claiming I was exclusionary, dismissive, and intimidating. The complaint said I took credit for others' work and constantly undermined team morale. HR opened an investigation. I was called in for an interview. They wouldn't tell me who submitted the complaint, but it wasn't hard to figure out. I presented documentation, emails, meeting notes, timestamps on project management tools, all showing Emily's inconsistencies and my repeated efforts to guide and support her. I even had chat logs where she apologized for missing deadlines or miscommunications. After 2 weeks, HR told me the matter was resolved and no further action would be taken against me. A few days later, Emily was gone. Just like that, fired, no goodbyes, no final emails. Her desk was cleared out overnight. Word spread fast. Then the whispers started. People began giving me side eyes. Someone joked in the break room, "Better watch out, or Jen'll get you fired too." Another colleague, who had been friendly with Emily, told me straight up, "You didn't have to ruin her life." Apparently, Emily had told several people that I set her up and smeared her to HR to eliminate her as competition. Some believed it. Even though HR confirmed I didn't initiate the complaint, I didn't, she did, and that she was fired for behavioral misconduct and falsifying project data, the damage to my workplace reputation was done. I still do my job, but the vibe is different. People avoid me. I'm not invited to happy hours. I'm not included in side projects like I used to be. Lucas, my fiancé, says I did nothing wrong and that Emily dug her own grave. My therapist says this kind of situation brings out people's insecurities and I shouldn't internalize the blame. But a part of me wonders, should I have handled it differently? Was I too harsh? Should I have just let her flounder instead of confronting her mistakes? Am I the a-hole for doing what I had to do even if it cost her job? Am I the a-hole for cutting my sister out of my life and banning her from my wedding after a secret she kept for years destroyed my relationship with my mother? My name is Jenna, 31F, and I've always been a fairly private person, but lately I've been questioning everything. My boundaries, my values, my ability to forgive, and even whether or not I'm a good person. My wedding is in 2 months, and instead of focusing on cake tastings and dress fittings, I'm sitting here wondering if I've become some kind of villain for doing what I felt was necessary to protect myself. This all centers around my younger sister, Natalie, 29F. Growing up, we were extremely close. We shared a bedroom until I was 15 and she was 13. We'd stay up late whispering secrets, passing notes in school, and even making up elaborate stories about how we were really long-lost royalty, waiting to be discovered. She was the first person I came out to when I realized I was bi at 17. When I went off to college, she cried for a week. We were sisters, best friends, confidants. But all of that started to unravel around 5 years ago when something massive and life-shattering came to light. A truth she had known about for years. A truth that has fundamentally changed my relationship with our mother and ruined what little peace I had with our family. Before I get into that, some context. Our mom, Rebecca, 56F, raised us mostly on her own. Our dad died in a car accident when I was 7 and Natalie was 5. I don't remember him well, just scattered images, a kind smile, the scent of his cologne, the way he used to call me Jen. Mom was always loving but a little cold. She kept the house spotless, meals on the table, and always made sure we had what we needed. But she wasn't big on emotional vulnerability. Hugs were brief. I love yous were rare, and if you cried, she handed you a tissue and walked away. Used to tell myself she was just grieving and that it was hard to raise 2 girls on your own. But as I got older, it started to feel more personal. She was just distant with me. Natalie, though, she adored, always doting on her, taking her shopping, praising her accomplishments. I figured it was just a mother-daughter dynamic thing, or maybe she related more to Natalie's personality. Nat was bubbly, artistic, charming. I was more serious and introverted, always reading books or writing in my journal. I tried not to let it hurt me, but it did. Fast forward to my mid-20s. I was living in Chicago, working in publishing and dating. My now fiancé, Lucas, 33M. Natalie was still in our hometown, pursuing photography, living with Mom. I visited for holidays, called when I could, and tried to keep our bond strong despite the distance. Then one Christmas, when I was 26, everything started to shift. I was home for a week and noticed Mom acting strangely, tense, jumpy. She'd snap at me over small things and then apologize awkwardly. At one point, I asked if I'd done something wrong, and she just shook her head and said, "You don't understand how hard it is to look at you sometimes." I didn't know what to make of that. Natalie overheard and pulled me aside later that night, saying, "Don't take it personally, Mom's just stressed." The weird behavior continued over the years. I'd call and she'd rush to get off the phone. She stopped asking about my life. At one point she told me I was getting too old to still be chasing publishing dreams and should think about a stable career. I thought maybe it was just her being her, critical, detached, but it still stung. Then came the bombshell. It was my 27th birthday. Lucas had planned a beautiful weekend getaway for us, and when we got back I found an anonymous letter in my mailbox. Just a plain envelope with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with typed words. "You're old enough to know the truth. Your father isn't the man who died in that accident. Ask your mother about David Ellison." I thought it was a prank, some sick joke, but the name David Ellison tugged at something in the back of my mind. I dug out old photo albums, flipped through every birthday card, letter, and scrapbook. Then I found it, a single photo tucked behind another in a frame. It was me as a toddler being held by a man I didn't recognize. On the back, written in faded ink, "David with Jenna, summer '96. My hands shook as I called my mom. "When?" She picked up. I asked point blank, "Who is David Ellison?" There was a long silence. Then she said, "Where did you hear that name?" I told her about the letter. She sighed and said, "Come home, we need to talk." The next weekend I drove back. We sat at the kitchen table. Natalie wasn't home, and Mom told me the truth. My biological father wasn't the man who died in that car crash. That man, Tom, had raised me from birth and legally adopted me, but he wasn't my real dad. She had an affair with David Ellison, a man she worked with at the time, and got pregnant. David was married and wanted nothing to do with me. She told Tom the truth, and he chose to stay, to raise me as his own. I was stunned. Everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie. I asked her why she never told me. She said, "It didn't matter. Tom loved you like his own. I didn't want to ruin your childhood." I asked why she treated me so differently than Natalie. She looked at me, eyes red, and whispered, "Because every time I looked at you, I saw the biggest mistake of my life." I left. I drove 3 hours back to Chicago in silence. Lucas tried to comfort me, but I couldn't process it. I felt like my entire identity had been ripped out from under me. I fell into a depression. I stopped calling Mom. I barely ate. Kept replaying her words. Biggest mistake of my life. Weeks passed. Then Natalie called. She said she wanted to come visit. I said okay. When she arrived, she brought a bottle of wine and her usual sunshine, but I could tell something was off. She avoided eye contact. Eventually, she said, "Jenna, there's something I need to tell you." She had known, for years, since she was 17. She overheard Mom on the phone with someone, her best friend apparently, talking about how she resented David Ellison and how that part of my life lives on in Jenna's face. Natalie confronted her, and Mom told her everything. Natalie said she swore to keep it a secret because it wasn't my place to tell you. But that's not all. She had also found David on Facebook 2 years ago. She messaged him. He never replied, but she knew where he lived, that he had other children, that he'd stayed married, and she never told me. She had looked at this man, my biological father, on a screen and decided to keep that from me. I lost it. I yelled, I cried, I told her to leave. She kept saying she did what she thought was best, that she didn't want to hurt me, that she was protecting me, but to me it felt like betrayal. She'd let me walk around in a fog, questioning why my mother couldn't love me the same way. She loved her. She knew the truth and she let me suffer. That was 4 years ago. I cut them both off. I went no contact with my mother and limited contact with Natalie. We texted a few times a year. She sent me birthday messages. I ignored them. When I got engaged last year, she called crying, begging to be part of the wedding. I told her I hadn't decided. She sent a 5-page letter apologizing, saying she missed me, that she was young and scared, and that she made a terrible mistake. I didn't respond. 6 months ago, I sent her a formal letter. She was not invited to the wedding. Last week she showed up at my office. She looked thinner, worn down. She begged me to reconsider. She said, "I've lost my sister, and now I'm losing my last chance to make it right." I told her I appreciated her apology, but some wounds run too deep. She sobbed, asked if she could at least attend as a guest. I said no. She said, "You're punishing me forever for one mistake." I told her it wasn't one mistake. It was years of deception, of letting me believe our mother's coldness was my fault, of holding back information about the man who helped create me. She left in tears. Now my aunt and cousins are calling me cruel, saying Natalie is genuinely remorseful and that I should let her come. My fiancé supports whatever I choose, but even he said, "It's clear she's hurting too." So now I'm here, torn between the principle of protecting my peace and the guilt of cutting out someone I once loved with all my heart. Am I the a-hole for cutting my sister out of my life and banning her from my wedding after she kept a secret for years that destroyed my relationship with my mother? I met Simon at a company retreat 5 years ago. He was charming, quick-witted, and always made me laugh with his terrible dad jokes. We started dating shortly after, moved in together a year later, and got engaged 2 years after that. I thought we had the kind of relationship that lasts forever. We bought a little 2-bedroom condo in a quiet neighborhood, adopted a scruffy terrier mix named Baxter, and spent weekends exploring farmers' markets and binge-watching crime documentaries. Simon worked as a software engineer at the same firm where I was a project manager, and although we tried not to let work bleed into our personal lives, our social circles overlapped so much that it was hard to keep things strictly separate. Our closest mutual friend was my college roommate, Rachel, who joined the company's marketing department 3 years ago. The three of us had lunch every Wednesday without fail. A few months before the wedding, I started noticing little things. Simon would lock his office door behind him. His phone would buzz late at night and he'd step into the bathroom to take calls. He'd say he was troubleshooting a critical bug or on call for server maintenance, and I believed him. Then one evening, I was leaving work later than usual and saw him through the glass wall of his office. He was sitting close to Rachel, their heads bent together over a laptop, laughing so hard he slapped his knee. It wasn't just friendly laughter. There was a familiarity in the way they touched, an ease that made my stomach clench. I decided to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they were just going over some presentation slides, or Rachel was helping him with a marketing tool integration. A few days later, I saw Rachel's name pop up on his phone screen as he got a text while we were out to dinner. The preview read, "Can't wait to see you tonight." My heart sank. I asked him about it when we got home. He said it was a joke. She'd sent him a winky face emoji by mistake, meant for her boyfriend. I wanted to believe him. I told myself I was being insecure, that after 7 years together I should trust him. Then, last month, Rachel stopped joining us for Wednesday lunches. At first, I thought she was busy with a big campaign, but Simon started leaving early on. Wednesdays, too. One afternoon, I found a paper coffee cup in our recycling bin with Rachel's name scrawled on the side, time-stamped 9:15 p.m., when Simon was supposed to be at a client meeting. I texted her, "Hey, didn't see you at lunch. Everything okay?" No reply. I texted Simon, "Hey, saw Rachel's name on that coffee cup. Did you pick it up on your way home from the office?" He said he'd grabbed it at a 24-hour cafe downtown after a late meeting. That made sense. He'd done that before. But something in his tone made me uneasy. I spent a sleepless night scouring his messages when he was in the shower. I know it was wrong, but my anxiety got the better of me. His phone was unlocked because we shared the passcode. What I saw made my blood run cold, a thread of messages between him and Rachel that went back 2 months. "I miss you. Can't stop thinking about last night. When can we meet again?" There were even photos, one of her in his arms at a dimly lit bar, another of her phone on his desk with the wallpaper set to a selfie of the two of them. I closed his phone and stood there, shaking. The next morning, I confronted him gently at first. "Simon, I saw some messages last night between you and Rachel." He froze, his coffee cup halfway to his lips. Then he dropped it, coffee spilling across the counter. He stammered, "It's not what you think." I showed him the screenshots. His face turned ashen. He admitted that he and Rachel had been having an affair for 2 months. He said it started as an emotional connection when he was stressed about work, that he didn't plan for it to go further. But then it did. He cried, apologized, begged for forgiveness. He swore it meant nothing, that he still loved me, that he'd end it immediately. I felt my heart shatter. I went to our couples therapist that afternoon. I told her everything, the late nights, the hidden texts, the photos. Simon sobbed through the session, promising to do whatever it took to rebuild trust. The therapist gave us homework, daily check-ins, shared calendars, transparency around phones. I agreed to try because I loved him, and I wanted to believe we could fix this. For 2 weeks, he kept his promise. No more secret texts, no more locked doors, no more late nights at the office. He shared his phone willingly, walked me to my car after work, even left little post-its on my mirror reminding me how much he loved me. But last Thursday, I came home early to surprise him with tickets to a show. His car was gone. I thought he might have picked me up, so I texted, "Hey, I got off early, want to meet me at the theatre?" No reply. I let myself into the condo and called his name. Nothing. Then I heard a soft moan from the bedroom. I opened the door to find Simon and Rachel tangled in our sheets. They froze when they saw me. He pushed her away, pulling on his jeans, but she sat up, her eyes red. "Cara," Simon said, "I'm so sorry." I felt like I'd been buried, alive. I grabbed my purse, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might faint. "Don't touch me," I whispered. "Get out." He followed me into the living room, apologizing. Rachel sat on the bed, head in her hands. I yelled at both of them, told them to get out. I called a lift. They stood there, stunned. He kept saying he loved me, that he'd end it. I said, "I don't believe you. I can't do this anymore." They left, the door clicking shut behind them. That night, I posted an anonymous note in the office break room. "If you've ever wondered why Simon and Rachel aren't at work tomorrow, here's your answer." I didn't use names, but within hours, rumors spread like wildfire. The next morning, both Simon and Rachel were called into HR. Simon was placed on leave pending an investigation into workplace misconduct. Rachel was transferred to another department. My phone exploded. Friends texted, "I'm so sorry, I can't believe he did this, you deserve better." Others messaged, "That was cruel. You shouldn't have exposed him at work. You could have handled it privately." Simon's parents called me, furious that I'd ruined his career. Rachel's fiancé, someone I'd never met, showed up at my door demanding an explanation. I told him the truth, that they'd been having an affair, that they both betrayed me, that I couldn't stand by silently. Now, 3 weeks later, I'm living alone with Baxter. I went back to the therapist, who told me that my reaction, both the breakup and the public exposure, was a way of reclaiming power after feeling utterly powerless. She said that while the public outing was dramatic, it forced them to face consequences and stopped them from hiding. But she also reminded me that I'm responsible for my own actions and their fallout. I'm torn. Part of me thinks I did what I had to do. I exposed the betrayal. I ended the affair. I protected my future. But another part of me wonders if I crossed a line by dragging their private lives into the public eye and jeopardizing their livelihoods. I could have quietly filed for divorce, changed the locks, and moved on. Instead, I orchestrated a public reveal that left them humiliated and unemployed. I'm left picking up the pieces of my own life, canceling wedding vendors, returning wedding gifts, asking for refunds. I feel relieved that I'm no longer living a lie, but I also feel a deep sorrow for how drastically everything changed in an instant. I miss the man I thought I knew. I miss the comfortable routines we shared. I'm learning to live without him, to trust again, and to find strength I never knew I had. So here I am, Reddit, asking, am I the a-hole for breaking up with my fiancé after discovering his months-long affair with my best friend, and for exposing their betrayal to his entire company, knowing it would cost them their jobs? I never thought I'd be the kind of person to have to choose between my sister and my best friend. My name is Cara, 30, and for as long as I can remember, I've lived by one simple rule: protect family at all costs. My younger sister, Emily, 28, and I grew up inseparable. 2 kids raised by a single mom who worked double shifts just to keep a roof over our heads. When Emily married her high school sweetheart, Mark, 32, 2 years ago, I thought our family was complete. And then I met my college roommate and best friend, Jenna, 29. Jenna and I bonded over bad breakups, bad haircuts, and a shared love of cheesy horror movies. She was the sister I chose. Last spring, Emily invited me and Jenna to her 10th anniversary party. It was a small backyard barbecue at her house, just family and a few close friends. I brought a chocolate cake. Jenna brought a bottle of rosé. Everything was warm and nostalgic, until I spotted Mark standing by the grill with Jenna, laughing a little too closely, his hand resting lightly on her lower back. My stomach fluttered, but I brushed it off. Maybe I was imagining things. Over the next few weeks, I noticed subtle signs. Texts from Jenna that popped up on her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. Can't wait to see you tonight. Mark suddenly had weekend business trips that coincided with Jenna's visits to town. Emily gushed about how happy Mark seemed, how he'd surprised her with a new grill. But I knew something was off. One Saturday, Jenna asked to borrow my car, just for an hour. I was at work, so I texted her the code. When I got home, my front porch was strewn with empty wine bottles, and the couch cushions had been shredded. My car was gone. I called Jenna. No answer. I called Emily. No answer. I spent an hour pacing my driveway, worrying about my friend and my sister. Finally, at 11 p.m., Jenna stumbled back with Mark's car. She looked disheveled, eyes red. She mumbled an apology about a small party at Mark's place, said they'd had too much wine, and insisted it wasn't a big deal. I didn't press her. I just let her sleep it off on my couch. The next morning, Emily called. "Kara, can you believe Jenna borrowed your car and came home at midnight?" I stammered, threw some excuse about a girls' night that went wrong. Emily was suspicious but said nothing more. I let it go, hoping I was overreacting. 2 weeks later, I walked into my apartment to find a note on the door from a neighbor. "Saw your car at 2 a.m. at 45 Maple Street. Thought you should know." 45. Maple was the address of a condo building where I'd seen Mark's car a few times. My heart pounded. I called Jenna and left a voicemail asking what was going on. No callback. I tried calling Mark at home. He answered sounding groggy, said he'd been working late. I asked where his car was. He said he had to park somewhere. Else because of a pothole on our street. I felt nauseous. That night I showed up unannounced at Emily's house. She opened the door in pajamas. "Kara, what's wrong?" I blurted out everything. Jenna's late-night visits, the neighbor's note, the wine bottles on my porch. Emily's face went pale. "You're imagining things," she said softly. "Mark and I have been having some trouble. He's been distant, but I thought I could handle it." She hugged me, but I could feel her tension. I realized then that Emily trusted Mark completely, and that if I tried to push further, I'd risk losing her trust. So I backed off, telling Emily I must have misread everything, that I was stressed at work, that it was nothing. Emily gave me a sympathetic smile and suggested we all go out for brunch the next day to relax. I agreed, but inside I was furious with myself for letting it drop. A month later, I found the smoking gun. I was home alone when I heard the front door click. I crept to the living room window and saw Jenna's car in my driveway. I peeked through the blinds. Jenna and Mark sneaking into my apartment, arms wrapped around each other. My chest tightened. I grabbed my phone and snapped a photo. Then I burst inside. They were on my couch, kissing. Jenna jumped up, shirt askew. Mark looked guilty. I held up my phone. "What the hell is this?" Jenna sputtered. "Kara, it's not what it looks." "Like?" Mark tried to explain. I'm sorry, Kara, but you don't understand." I cut him off. "No, I think I understand perfectly. You've been using my apartment as your secret tryst for months. You've lied to my sister. You've betrayed her, and you've betrayed me." I felt tears stinging my eyes. They scrambled for excuses. Jenna said she and Mark fell in love, that she'd tried to end it but couldn't help herself. Mark said his marriage was over, that he'd been unhappy for years. I told them they needed to leave, both of them. They gathered their things in silence, avoiding my eyes, and walked out. That night I sat in the dark and wrote an email. To Emily. Subject: I'm sorry you have to read this, Emily. I've known you and Mark have been struggling, but I never imagined this. I'm so sorry to be the one to tell you, but I saw him at my apartment with Jenna, your friend, my best friend. They've been seeing each other behind your back. I have proof, and I'm happy to share everything. I didn't want to believe it, but I had to do something. I love you and I'm here for you, but I couldn't stay silent. I hit send, then curled up on the couch and sobbed. My phone rang moments later. It was Emily, voice trembling. Why would you do this without talking? To me first, she asked. I tried to explain that I'd been torn between loyalty to her and loyalty to my own hurt. She yelled, You took his side. You let this go until you couldn't ignore it anymore. You humiliated me. She hung up. My heart broke. I'd betrayed my sister's trust by confronting her husband. I'd betrayed my friend by exposing her. Affair. But I couldn't keep their secret either. The next morning, Emily arrived at my door with her suitcase. I'm staying with Mom, she said. I can't look at you right now. I watched her walk away, suitcase in hand, tears streaming down her face. In the days that followed, our small circle of friends fractured. Some texted me, calling me an angel for telling the truth. Others called me a backstabber for ruining a marriage and a friendship. Jenna posted a cryptic Instagram story. Some betray you in darkness, some in daylight. Choose your company wisely. Mark quit his job and moved out of town. Emily refused to return my calls. I moved out of the apartment too. Every corner reminded me of betrayal. I took a new place in a neighborhood I barely knew. I threw away the coffee mugs they'd given me as wedding presents. I donated my friendship bracelets. I changed my phone number. Now 6 months later, Emily and I speak only through terse emails about splitting our parents' inheritance. She still won't acknowledge Jenna or Mark. She's convinced I orchestrated the whole thing to ruin her. Life? Jenna has tried to reach out, sending messages like, I miss my friend and I'm so sorry. I haven't replied. My new apartment is quiet. Too quiet. I sometimes think about forgiving them, about calling Emily and begging her to come back. But then I remember the lies, the stolen trust, the night I had to choose between sister and friend, and I close my eyes and remind myself that I did what I had to do. So here I am, Reddit, wondering, am I the a-hole for exposing my sister's husband's affair with my best friend, uninviting both of them from her wedding and telling her in an email instead of face-to-face? I never imagined I'd find myself in this position, standing in my husband's office lobby, phone in hand, heart pounding, as I waited for the entire staff to gather so I could deliver a special announcement. I, 35F, have been married to David, 37 Mem, for 7 years. We met in graduate school, bonded over long study sessions and a shared love of absurdist theatre, and built a life together in a mid-sized city where he climbed the corporate ladder at a marketing firm, while I worked as a project manager for a non-profit. We bought a house, got a dog, traveled whenever we could, and always seemed to be on the same page. Until about 6 months ago, when he started coming home late, smelling faintly of a floral perfume that wasn't mine. At first, I chalked it up to stress. His workload had spiked after a big client pitch, and he'd often stayed late. I asked if he was okay, and he assured me he was just burning the midnight oil. I believed him. I even offered to bring him dinner at work. But one evening I stayed late myself to finish a report, and I saw him through the glass-walled conference room, sitting with one of his junior associates, Laura, 29F, leaning in close as they laughed at something on her phone. The way they touched hands made my stomach clench. I didn't say anything that night. Instead, I drove home, convinced I must have misread the situation. Maybe they were just friends. The next day, I casually asked David about Laura. He told me she was one of the new hires, bright and ambitious, and that he'd been mentoring her. He sounded sincere. I nodded and smiled, but a seed of doubt had been planted. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing more. His phone would buzz with texts from L, always late at night. He'd duck into the bathroom to take calls. He began closing his laptop the moment I walked in the door. One morning, I found a strand of blonde hair on his jacket. Laura's hair was nearly platinum. Mine was chestnut brown. When I asked, he said it must have come from the office. I swallowed my rising panic and said nothing. I felt like I was losing my mind. Was I being paranoid? Was I letting my insecurities get the better of me? I considered hiring a private investigator, but the thought of paying someone to follow my husband felt desperate. Instead, I confided in my best friend, Megan, 34F, who advised me to gather proof before making any accusations. She suggested I install a phone tracking app on his phone under the guise of finding a lost device. I hated the idea of spying, but my anxiety drove me to it. A week later, I had the evidence, dozens of texts between David and Laura, late-night rendezvous requests, flirty emojis, intimate confessions about how good it felt to talk to someone who understands me. My hands shook as I read them. I confronted him that evening. He stood in the living room, backlit by the glow of our floor lamp, and denied everything. "It's just banter," he said. "She's going through a rough patch with her family. I'm trying to be supportive." His eyes were watery, but I recognized the telltale signs of a practiced lie. I felt my world crack. I had two options: accept his excuse and pretend it didn't happen, or expose him and risk destroying everything we'd built. I tried couples therapy, hoping a neutral third party could help us navigate the crisis. At first, David was contrite. He admitted he'd been texting Laura and apologized profusely. He promised to end all contact, to hand over his phone, to do whatever it took. I wanted to believe him. For 2 weeks, he stuck to his word. No more late-night texts, no bathroom calls, no perfume lingering on his shirt. I thought maybe we could heal. Then, 2 Fridays ago, I walked into his office to surprise him with lunch. I planned to meet him in the lobby and walk him back to the car. Instead, I arrived early and saw him through the glass doors, kissing Laura behind the reception desk. My breath caught, the world tilted. I watched as he pulled back, looked around nervously and whispered, "Don't text me tonight," before stepping away. Laura's shoulders shook and she dabbed at her eyes. I knew then that this wasn't just innocent flirting. It was an ongoing affair. I felt fury, heartbreak, shame. I had never felt so powerless. I backed away, left the lunch bag unopened in my car, and drove home in tears. That night, I sat at our kitchen table, phone in hand, and made the decision. If he wouldn't end it for us, I'd end it for him. But I couldn't just leave quietly. He needed to face the consequences of his betrayal. The next morning, I called a company-wide meeting at his office, something I'd never have dreamed of doing. I texted his assistant a false urgent update about a new marketing directive that required all staff to gather in the main lobby at 10 a.m. I told her to hold off on informing him until everyone was assembled. My hands trembled as I prepared my speech in my notes app. I wanted to expose him in front of his colleagues so he'd feel the weight of his actions, and so the world would know he couldn't hide behind just banter anymore. At exactly 10 a.m., the reception area was packed. I stepped out from behind a pillar, my heart hammering. I saw the confusion on David's face as he joined the crowd. I cleared my throat. "Good morning, everyone," I began, my voice surprisingly steady. "Thank you for gathering here. I know this isn't a standard meeting, but there's something important I need to address." Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the room. David's face drained of color. "I'm here because some of you might be wondering why I'm standing in your lobby and why your marketing VP, my husband, is looking a bit surprised," I continued. I held up his phone. "I have evidence that he's been engaging in an inappropriate relationship with a coworker, one that goes far beyond mentoring or casual banter." I passed my phone to the receptionist to project screenshots on the lobby's video screen, texts, hotel check-in confirmations, late-night selfie evidence. Gossips filled the room. Laura was ushered out by HR. David sank against the wall, head in his hands. The CEO, who happened to be visiting that morning, stepped forward. "Is this true?" he asked. David didn't answer. HR escorted him to a private office. I felt sick, but also a fierce sense of vindication. I'd given him every chance to end it, and he'd chosen lies. By lunchtime, news of the affair had spread throughout the building and beyond. David was put on immediate leave pending an investigation. Laura was placed on suspension. I went home to an empty house. Sputnik sat at the door, tail wagging hopefully, until he saw me and whimpered. I collapsed on the couch, sobbing. Ethan, my own brother, had once said, "There's nothing more humiliating than having your spouses." Lies revealed in public. He was right, the fallout was brutal. David refused to talk to me. He texted only once. "You didn't have to humiliate me like that." I replied, "You humiliated me first." He didn't respond. Our friends were divided. Some praised my courage. Others said I was cruel and vindictive. My own parents were mortified, worried about their grandchild growing up in a broken home. My mother cried, begging me to reconcile. My father said, "You had every right, but what comes next?" The question haunted me. I consulted a lawyer about divorce. I moved out of our marital home and into a small rental near my office. I kept Sputnik with me. He's been my constant companion, sleeping at my feet, offering unconditional love. I enrolled in therapy to process the betrayal, the shame, the loss. Some days I felt liberated. Other days I felt like a failure for letting it go so far. David's career lies in tatters. Word of his affair spread through the industry. His LinkedIn endorsements vanished. He reached out to colleagues privately, begging for forgiveness. But the damage was done. I wrestled with guilt. Did I go too far? Should I have handled it privately? Could I have saved our marriage if I'd confronted him more gently? But then I remembered the hidden accounts, the late-night rendezvous, the lies. I realized that my public exposure was the only way to ensure he faced the consequences and couldn't simply hide behind another apology. Now, 6 weeks later, I'm rebuilding my life. I accepted a promotion at work, moved into a new apartment. That feels like mine, not ours. I date casually, testing the waters. I focus on my friends who stood by me and on therapy sessions where I learned to trust again. I still think of David sometimes, of our happy years, our plans for the future. But those thoughts are bittersweet, tinged with the knowledge that love without trust is a house built on sand. So here I am, Reddit, asking, am I the a-hole for publicly exposing my husband's affair at his workplace, effectively ruining his career and humiliating him, even though I'd given him every chance to end it privately? I grew up next door to Maya, 31F. From sandbox to prom, we were inseparable. Two peas in a pod, partners in every prank and late-night heart-to-hearts. When she got engaged to Alex, 32M, last year, I was honored when she asked me to be her maid of honor. I pored over dress swatches, organized her bachelorette scavenger hunts, and helped coordinate flowers, favors, and the seating chart. I believed in her and in us without question. Meanwhile, my younger brother Ethan, 29M, and I have always had a rocky relationship. He's brilliant but impulsive, charming but reckless. Growing up, I protected him from our parents' criticism, but in college we drifted apart. He moved across the country, built a life I barely knew, and we only reconnected at family holidays. Still, when Maya's engagement party rolled around, I invited Ethan as my +1. After all, I thought family comes first, and Maya loved him enough to welcome him. 2 weeks before the wedding, at Ethan's request, I met him for coffee. He looked nervous, kept checking his phone. Finally, he confessed he'd slept with Maya twice, 2 months ago, while Alex was out of town on business. It had just happened, he said, one drunken night. But then again, it wasn't just one night. He didn't want to hurt me, but felt I deserved to know. My heart stopped. I remember the coffee mug shaking in my hands, hot liquid sloshing over the rim, and a tight knot in my chest that said, "This can't be real." I left coffee cold, texted Maya to postpone dress fittings, and sat with her one afternoon. I told her what Ethan said. She stared at me, eyes wide, then burst into tears. "He's lying," she wailed. "He's jealous of Alex. He's always wanted me." She accused me of siding with Ethan because we were siblings. I insisted I believed Ethan. He was my brother. She insisted he was twisting the truth. I suggested she ask Alex to reschedule his trip and come home early. She refused, saying he needed to finalize that deal. I urged her to confront him after the trip. She said she'd rather wait. I felt like I was falling into quicksand. That weekend, Ethan texted me screenshots of a message thread. Maya's phone number saved as Moonlight, and explicit sexts between them, photos, hotel receipts. "I can't wait to feel you again" messages. He said he'd tried to block her, but she kept reaching out. My blood ran cold as I scrolled through the evidence. The betrayal cut twice. My best friend had cheated on her fiancé and slept with my brother. I felt sick, angry, betrayed, ashamed. Knew I had to act. I called Alex, told him we needed to talk immediately. He cut his trip short, flew home and met me at a cafe. I showed him the screenshots. His face went from confusion to devastation to white-hot rage in seconds. He called. "Maya?" She admitted everything, sobbing that she was sorry, that she'd lost her mind, that it didn't mean anything. He hung up and stared at me. "Why did you tell me?" he asked quietly. "Because you deserve the truth," I said, "and because I can't be maid of honor to someone who lied to me and to you." Maya begged, through tears and texts and voicemails, for me to stand by her, to help her fix things with Alex. She reminded me of our friendship, our history. She told me that Alex loved her enough to forgive, that Ethan was a jealous liar. I blocked her number. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from mutual friends. "You're too harsh. This is private. Let her figure it out." I felt like everyone was telling me to back off, to let Maya handle her own mess. Alex decided to call off the wedding. He said he couldn't stand in front of their families knowing she'd betrayed him. He thanked me for telling him, hugged me and walked away. Maya texted me that night, "You ruined my wedding, you ruined my life." I didn't respond. My parents found out. My dad called me selfish, accused me of betraying Maya's trust. My mom cried, saying I should have urged Maya to come clean herself. Ethan, meanwhile, emailed me an apology. "I'm sorry you got dragged into this. I never meant to hurt anyone, but I had to tell the truth." I replied, "You did the right thing. I just wish it didn't have to be me who did it." It's been 2 months. Maya moved back home, broke up with Alex, and is now dating someone new she met at a yoga retreat. She occasionally posts on social media about false friends and women who betray you. Our mutual friends avoid me at gatherings, give me cold smiles. Alex and I talk sometimes. He's grateful, but distant. Ethan and I are rebuilding our sibling bond, but it's awkward. Every conversation reminds me of betrayal. I'm left wondering, did I do the right thing? Maya was my best friend. Was it my place to uninvite her, to expose her, to trigger the collapse of her relationship? Could I have encouraged her to confess herself, rather than drop a bomb on Alex? But if I hadn't, would she have dragged him down the aisle while lying to his face? And if I stayed silent, could I ever look Alex in the eye? Reddit, am I the a-hole for refusing to be maid of honor and for uninviting my best friend from her wedding after discovering she cheated on her fiancé with my brother, and for telling her fiancé the truth? I never thought I'd be writing this. For almost 4 years, my world revolved around Ethan. His laugh, his late-night study breaks, the way he always made me coffee just the way I liked it. We met in the university library, both of us reaching for the same obscure textbook on behavioral economics. He cracked a joke about intellectual foreplay, and I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my latte. By the end of that week, we were sharing notes, splitting burritos at the campus food truck, and swapping Spotify playlists. A month later, we were inseparable. After graduation, we moved into a tiny one-bedroom apartment in the city's arts district. The walls were bare and the floors creaked, but we didn't care. We painted one wall bright teal, hung string lights, and filled it with thrift store furniture. Every weekend felt like an adventure, exploring street markets, hiking nearby, trails, or just binging sci-fi shows on the couch. He got me through the panic attacks I'd hidden from my family. I helped him navigate his first real-world finance job. We were a team. About a year into living together, we adopted a scrappy little rescue dog we named Sputnik. Suddenly, our apartment felt full. Sputnik's toy bones rolled across the floor, his barks echoed in the hall, and he slept curled up at our feet. We celebrated our first anniversary at the rooftop bar where we'd had our first date, and he surprised me with a necklace engraved with our initials. I thought, this is it. This is forever. Last month, everything changed in a way I never saw coming. It began innocently enough. My roommate Olivia asked me out for drinks on a Thursday evening. Olivia and I have been friends since freshman year. She's bold, funny, and always knows exactly what to say when I'm stressed. That night, though, she looked unsettled. Her eyes kept flicking to her phone, her words stumbling. Finally, she blurted, "I have to show you something. It's about Ethan." My chest tightened as she pulled out her phone and opened a messaging app. There it was, pages of flirty texts between her and my boyfriend. "You looked incredible tonight. I can't stop thinking about your lips. Meet me at the coffee shop after work?" The messages were time-stamped at 1:47 a.m., 3:12 a.m., 4:05 a.m., messages sent when I assumed he was sleeping beside me. I felt like the ground was ripped from under me. My vision blurred as I stared at the evidence of their betrayal. I confronted Olivia first. She burst into tears, stammering apologies. "I never meant for you to find out like this. It was stupid. He texted me first." She swore it had been months of harmless flirting, that it never went beyond words. She promised she'd cut him off immediately. I hugged her because in that moment, it felt like the only human connection. I had left, but every fiber of my being ached with the knowledge that my best friend had been involved. When I got home, the apartment felt alien. Sputnik whimpered as I collapsed on the couch. I waited for Ethan to come through the door, but each passing minute tightened the knot in my stomach. Finally, he walked in, humming a tune from a podcast he liked. I held up Olivia's phone. His face turned ashen. "What? Where did you get that?" he stuttered. He denied it at first, blaming misinterpretation, suggesting I'd misread innocent compliments. But when I pressed, he confessed. He admitted to months of texting Olivia, saying it had been a mistake, that he was lonely, that it meant nothing. My tears came hot and fast. I asked how he could do this to me, how he could lie, how he could betray our love. He cried, begged for forgiveness, promised to end it all right then. I was shattered. Everything I'd believed about us, his promises, our future, our late-night talks, felt like a lie. I spent that night curled up in the guest room, listening to his apologies as he paced outside, leaving frantic voicemails that I didn't answer. After 2 days of silence, Ethan suggested therapy. He said he wanted to understand why he'd cheated on me, to rebuild trust, to salvage our relationship. I wanted to believe him. I wanted the man I fell in love with back. So we booked sessions with a couples counselor. Therapy was brutal. We dissected our communication patterns, our unmet needs, our individual insecurities. I admitted that I'd been wrapped up in my career, sometimes ignoring him when he wanted to talk. He admitted that he'd felt unappreciated, that the spark he'd once felt had dulled, and that Olivia had been a dangerous escape. We cried in that sterile office, sometimes at the same time, sometimes alone, our tears mixing with stale air and faint lavender spray. After several weeks, things seemed to improve. Ethan deleted Olivia's number, turned off all notifications, changed passwords, even let me scroll through his phone at random. He planned date nights, cooked my favorite meals, and wrote me little love notes that I found taped to my mirror each morning. I thought maybe we were turning a corner. Maybe love really could conquer betrayal. Then, late one Friday, I came home early from work to pick up Sputnik's favorite squeaky toy. Ethan's phone buzzed on the coffee table. The name on the screen wasn't Olivia. It was some random username, livesnap23. My heart pounded. I grabbed his phone. There it was, a Snapchat message. "Miss you. Want to hang tonight?" I stared, frozen. He'd created a secret account to keep talking to her. I felt my blood turn cold. I confronted him again, his face crumpled. He tried to explain, claiming he was only checking in, that he missed her friendship. But I'd heard that before. He'd insisted it meant nothing with the texts too. I realized then that his promises were empty. He thought he could have both worlds, the comfort of our relationship and the thrill of betrayal. I felt sick to my core. He moved into the guest room that night. Sputnik whined by the door. The apartment felt hollow. I didn't sleep. I lay awake, listening to his sobs through the wall, asking for forgiveness, pleading for one more chance. I wanted to believe him so badly. I missed his warmth, his humor, the easy companionship we once had. Friends took sides. My roommate urged me to leave him. "No one deserves that," she said. "My sister told me to fight for him if I still loved him." My co-workers whispered about relationship red flags over lunch. I felt torn between the man who had been my safe harbor and the man who had betrayed me. A week later, Ethan surprised me with a scrapbook. He'd collected photos from our trips, the waterfall hike where I slipped, and he caught me, the jazz concert, where he danced in the aisle, our first apartment's mismatched furniture. Each page had a caption, "You make me better. Remember when my favorite day was." On the last page, "I'm so sorry, I can't live without you." I sobbed as I turned the pages, feeling the weight of our shared history. But love isn't always enough. I realized that if I took him back, I'd always wonder, is this scrapbook a promise or a plea? Would I trust him again, or would every phone buzz make me freeze? Could I really spend my life doubting him, scanning his messages for signs of betrayal? Last night I told him I couldn't do it. I said I loved him but couldn't rebuild our relationship on broken trust. I reminded him that trust is the foundation of any partnership. Without it, love crumbles. He begged me not to leave, promised therapy, pleaded for one more chance. But I packed his bag and asked him to go. I watched him drive away, head in, his hands, and I felt a hollow ache. Now I'm alone with Sputnik, the walls echoing with memories of laughter and arguments, of midnight confessions and Sunday morning pancakes. I've taken to journaling every night, writing down the pain, the relief, the guilt, the freedom. I attend therapy alone, learning to trust myself again, to rebuild my sense of worth. I remind myself that I deserve honesty, respect, and fidelity. Replay the early days, how he lit up when he saw me, how he held my hand in public, how he told me I was beautiful even when I felt at my worst. I wonder if any of that was real. But I also remember my own strength, how I confronted betrayal, how I sought help, how I refused to settle for half-truths. I realized that sometimes loving someone means letting them go. So here I am, Reddit, raw and vulnerable, asking, am I the a-hole for breaking up with my boyfriend after discovering he'd been secretly texting my best friend for months, even though he begged me for forgiveness and promised to change?